Hello and welcome to Art with Mr. P. This week we're looking at drawing again, but before we do that I'd like you to search and have a little look at a piece of artwork by Sarah Morris, and it's called Reflecting Pool Capital. She painted it in 2001, so it's not that old. Now, why do we look at the work of famous artists? Well, firstly, like reading any story, it can make us feel good. Because that's what looking at a piece of artwork is a bit like. It's a bit like reading a story, but instead of reading the letters and words, we're reading the lines, the shapes, the colours, the texture. Actually, we're reading the visual elements. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And that's my second point. Why look at the work of famous artists? The more you do it, the more enjoyable it becomes, the better you get at it. And thirdly, look at artwork because it's fun. So we are looking at the work of Sarah Morris today. Have a look at that. Try to read the story. Think about why Sarah Morris has used the lines and the shapes and the colours in the way she has. Anyway, it's time for us to have some fun, so let's get creative. Okay, we're looking at Sarah Morris. We're looking at Reflecting Pool Capital. And we can see that Sarah Morris is very interested in straight lines that are filled in with bright colours. But we do get this idea of perspective and about how maybe we're looking down some sort of corridor or avenue. So I'm going to start my story off, inspired by Sarah Morris, with something nearly halfway up, but not quite, a line that could well be the horizon. So I'm trying not to press too hard. And then I noticed that she's put in a line, a vertical line halfway. And we've got more lines, but you may notice that the closer to the edges you get, the closer the lines become. And what this does is it gives this illusion of space. And because of the shapes that we're looking at, that we associate with maybe with buildings, the spaces give this idea of depth. So it's a little bit like looking down a road or into a box. Okay, now, like I say, the closer towards the edge that we get, further apart are the lines. Yeah. So I'm going to put a series of lines on here. Now, you've already noticed that not all the lines line up with the edges of the piece of paper. I'm trying to make these lines just about the same weight or thickness. So there are the horizontal lines. There aren't actually very many vertical lines, because let's have a look at this. If we imagine this is our horizon, actually I notice that quite a few of the lines appear to come from a point on our vertical. So I'm going to put a little dot there. Now in art we would call that the vanishing point, and that's an imaginary point in the distance that everything gets smaller towards, yeah? And you'll see what I mean, because if I line up the ruler with that vanishing point, I can put these lines in. Now, she's done something slightly strange here, because normally a vanishing point, you would keep the ruler on the vanishing point, but we want these lines to be all much same weight or thickness. So although they appear to be vanishing, they don't obey all the rules. Yeah? See how tricky that is. Right, so there's a vanishing point. We'll do the same on the other side, I think. Keeping the lines the same thickness, but still giving this impression of perspective and spatial distance. And then we've got some lines coming up the top. I don't know if you're starting to get the impression of how the middle of the page is further away. I think we'll keep this vaguely symmetrical. Looks a bit like a Union flag as well. Right, and we've got some almost verticals, haven't we? So we've got some lines that join up. The lines that we've just drawn, yeah? And they tend to tilt inwards as they go up the piece of paper. And that gives us the impression of being high up, yeah? Being higher up. Okay, so that's how I'm starting. That's the starting point. That's the beginning of our story. Yeah? After we've looked at the Sarah Morris artwork. It needs a lot more lines on it. It looks like I'm probably going to keep the lines white, but you don't have to. Remember, this is your story. Sarah Morris is just a starting point. But what it tends to say, this story, is that the negative spaces, or the spaces that are in between the lines, are actually the colourful ones. Yeah? So you can use pen, you can use coloured pencil, you can use whatever you like, yeah? To fill in the spaces in between. Yeah? Nice and slow and careful. Yeah? So what you should end up with are a lot of straight edge shapes with white lines in between them. Keep going until your page is filled up. So your page is then full. Okay, very good. Let's do it. So we've looked at a piece of artwork by Sarah Morris, and what we've done is retell the story in that artwork. So you have used line, shape and colour in your own way, but you've used Sarah Morris's work as a starting point, as inspiration for your own story. Next week, we'll be looking at painting again, and I'll see you then.